Evan Drellich is with us once again here on A's Cast Live. It's great to have you back on the program. I was telling our listeners I'm on Amazon now, all the different ways they can get it. I mean, it's amazing how life has changed for us, right? You can get the audio CD, you can get the hardcover, you can get it for your Kindle. But I'm letting everybody know how to get it. I got the electronic copy. I plan on reading it tonight. The work that you have done from the Chronicle to the Athletic is second to none. Congratulations on another great book.
I appreciate it. First things first, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, good. That's good. No, I appreciate the kind words. I do. The book took a long time, and I'm really just glad that people have a chance to read it now. I stayed quiet for, the better part of the last 3 years. Other people are writing and talking about the Astros, and they're allowed to, but it was hard, waiting for this to get out into the world.
Well, I want you to let our listeners know that when they buy this book, what they're getting is your time with the Houston Chronicle, all the stuff, all the research you always kept and you had in your back pocket. So when this stuff started to break, that you knew what was going on, you could go back to your archive. So people need to know when they're reading this book, there is a long history of information that you have had to back everything that you have in the book.
Yeah, it's a 3-year project in terms of me, agreeing to a book deal and then actively working on the book, but it's really a decade of my reporting career. I mean, there's stuff in here dating to the start of my time with the Astros as the Houston Chronicle beat writer. So that goes back to November of 2013. And, I'm not the smartest or most organized guy in the entire world, but I did do something smart in, holding on to my notes and in doing it in a way that was still accessible and usable years after the fact. And I do think the fact that I had covered the team in this period, in a controversial period, leading up to the scandal, gives me a vantage point that, I think that's hard to replicate, right? I was there and I covered a lot of stuff that really remained relevant.
Well, you start thinking about sports scandals in the history of modern sports, and we start thinking about Pete Rose. We start thinking about the PEDs. You start thinking of Spygate with the Patriots. At what point did you realize I've got something here that's major? This is a really, really big deal.
I knew it was big from the start. I didn't know it was. I don't think anybody could have predicted exactly what unfolded. I remember thinking that it was possible people would be fired. I wasn't sure people would be fired. I think I more felt it likely that people would not be fired. I did expect suspensions. In hindsight, yeah, of course they're going to get fired. So look, when I was working on it, took 13 months to get the story done. I knew it was a big deal. I think the thought I had more was just, am I ever going to get it done? Is it going to get out into the world? I mean, there was a period when I first learned about it that I was unemployed. I'd been fired. So it was a weird road to finally getting to the point where it comes out, but I'm very glad it did come out.
So I was reading part of the description to our audience before you came on that they have on Amazon. And I when we think about corporations, we think about the shareholders. You always got to appease the shareholders. It's about the money. And as it says in here, squeezing every dollar out of everything. We accept that. We don't like it, but we accept that about corporate America. But we don't like that for our sports teams. And really kind of what I'm reading here in the description is how much the Astros, like it or not, were really run like an American corporation. And people don't want that from their sports teams.
Yeah, I mean, they want some of it. I think that's an overarching theme of the book. I mean, the end of my introduction is this is what happens when corporate America meets America's pastime. And, there are some distinctions. Baseball is not the outside world. It is 30 teams, 30 businesses that are in a closed circuit. You're not actually trying to put the other guy out of business, right? The Yankees don't want the A's to go out of business. They are all reliant on each other to some degree. And there's a lot of movement between these businesses, right? Executives and staff go from the A's to Oakland, A's to Oakland, A's to the Yankees, whatever, right? And so kind of more than most industries, you actually have an incentive not to put everybody out and anger everybody. And I also think it is baseball. We treat it with more idealism than we might say like Walmart. It's not that baseball is literally the worst working conditions in the world, but for a long time, people were treating the rosters with a Moneyball lens, right? Moneyball comes out and it's, well, how can we get the cheapest, most efficient rosters? Well, what's going to happen? These owners are going to try to bring the Moneyball approach to the entirety of the business. And Crane was really at the forefront of that. Jim Crane, the owner. Teams used to be a little bit more, you did a good job for us. We're not going to throw you out on the street. Some jobs don't really exist in the outside world in baseball. Like if you're a baseball scout, you can find work, hopefully, but there's not a clear analog, right, to a regular working position. And
Correct.
You work long hours, you're on the road a lot, your pay probably isn't good. It's not like everybody in baseball is making a lot of money.
Broadcasters.
Yeah.
I mean, if people who work in sports and whatever sport you work in, it's not like if you say, I want to switch my career, you don't really have the resume that goes, hey, I'm just going down the street and getting another job.
Right. And so, but there's also this reality that there's always a line of people out the door, right? And so, these teams, the Astros included, just started acting more ruthlessly, more efficiently, and squeezing out that extra dollar. Well, this guy's making $80K. All right, well, go get somebody making $55K. They'll love to work in sports, and they're right, they will. But there's a lot of other examples besides just letting people go. Not giving people titles, contract stuff they would do. Myriad different examples in the book of this bottom line driven culture that took over in Houston.
Jim Crane is now a guy who's coming out every year and playing at the AT&T out of Pebble Beach, the golf tournament with the pros and the celebs. A couple of years ago, Jim Crane was on KMBR. It's the sports station here in San Francisco.
Yeah.
He does his interview. He's walking out of the media room as I'm walking in, I see him. And then I go over to the guys and they go, you're not going to believe what he just said. Off the air, he goes, hey guys, you got to realize we weren't the only ones doing it. He wouldn't say it on the air, but he said it off the air to these guys, and then he walks out. And your book talks about this. How, we don't know, but it's kind of like the steroid era. It's just not a couple guys doing it. A lot of people are doing it. Baseball wanted to make the Astros. It's the Astros. They get punished. We'll put a bow on it. It's over. Really, what do you think? And I know your research is in this book. I mean, how many teams, what's your thought on how many teams were doing it?
I think this topic is complicated. Does someone else cheating justify your cheating, right? Barry Bonds, the famous story is, why did he start using PEDs? Because he saw McGwire and Sosa do it. Well, does that make it right that Bonds did it? But nonetheless, if you're just trying to trace how this happened, that is what happened in baseball. You had the Yankees are understood to be ground zero, and Chris Young, outfielder, goes to Boston, arrives in Boston's like, hey, you guys aren't using your video rooms to decode signs and then get it to the runner on second base. Like, what, we had all your signs. Red Sox start doing it. So more veteran contending teams were doing this base runner system. There's another question about, does severity in cheating matter? Does the level of crime, is any crime a crime, or are there different degrees of crimes? I think most. What's that?
It's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
Not a felony, it's a misdemeanor.
Well, right. And you can sit there and go, well, should the base runner system been considered a felony? Certainly the commissioner's office had some influence in how that was viewed by being really light on the Red Sox and the Yankees. But nonetheless, even putting that aside, what the Astros do at home in 2017, the famous garbage can scheme, is different. When you have the base runner system, what the Dodgers, Yankees, Astros, Red Sox, Astros on the road were doing, you have the runner on base. The home system for the Astros in 17, you have the camera in center field going to the monitor behind the dugout in the tunnel, and you don't need a runner on base. It's entirely off the field, with the assistance of electronics. And so there's something that really, maybe the base runner involved in the other system is a trick where you should go, yeah, but they're still cheating. Yeah, they are still cheating. There's something more flagrant about what the Astros were doing in the eyes of most, including me. So yeah, some teams, the evidence is that there were veteran contending teams. I don't think literally everybody using a base runner system. And then the Astros came in on top of that and said, we're doing better. We're taking this 1, 2, 3 steps further. And they did. And, this argument of, well, somebody else was speeding too. Yeah, but you were speeding 130 and I'm the cop and I pulled you over. I'm not saying I'm the cop, but that's the argument, right? Like the idea that you catch everyone who ever does anything. Where in the world does that happen? It like, find me the example of that. It just doesn't happen.
Thing that, I don't know if it fascinates me, but it really intrigues me. We kind of lived it at the baseball winter meetings. I don't want to get too deep because he's a friend, but there was somebody who works for the Astros that they were jerking around. And it was like shocking. Like, are you serious? And couldn't believe it. And then you just start to think of what people know on the outside. Like Garrett Cole leaves and Carlos Correa leaves. And now it's Verlander wins the Cy Young. They win the World Series. He leaves. It's like they can do whatever they want. And your book talks about it. Winning fixes everything. It's like, really, they don't care about the national PR. They don't care about the local PR. A lot of their decisions, like the person that we know, it was an unpopular decision. Luckily, everything got worked out. But to me, from the outside, it looks like they just do not care and they win. And everybody in the end just goes, well, they're winning.
I think they do care now. I think they've realized they have to. I mean, you can look at Dana Brown's hiring as certainly an image change from before, right? Somebody with more of a scouting background, not in the mold of Jeff Luhnow and James Click. And I think you're on to something with the idea that they were willing to just break every norm and boundary in the sport. But there is a cost to it. And the idea that you're right, this is really the book in a nutshell. Does winning actually fix everything? And the 17 Astros are really the example of a team where that I don't think it did, because they held up that trophy. They can still hold up that trophy. And the conversation doesn't end there. And so it's pretty rare to actually have an example where the bottom line result doesn't matter. One thing I think about, and I mentioned at the end of another podcast, but it's probably something I need to mention more often. Let's say the Astros don't get caught cheating. Let's say they never do it. And even let's say it could even take out like the Brandon Taubman incident, right?
Yeah.
There's still a huge book of all the crap going on behind the scenes there. And it's really hard for people to reconcile that. But they're winning baseball games. So aren't they great? Aren't they smart? Depends what you value, right? Do you care about the means to the end, or do you only care about the end? Often in this country and the way we're conditioned and with fandom and yada, yada, it's very bottom line driven. But I think the book succeeds in showing people there are other things that go along with this. There are other costs. There's a lot under the hood that you don't see when a team wins 105 games or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it, because we the A's, we just won an award for one of the best front offices to work in professional sports, just not in baseball, in professional sports. So when you say under the hood, as somebody who works for a team, I work for the A's, I'm proud of that. Yeah, okay, we lost 102 games, but when this all ends up coming back to what? Moneyball. Where did Moneyball start? It started here. Yeah. There's a lot of great things about working for the A's that when you talk about under the hood, it's kind of scary to think, because everything you get out of Houston is just so negative. It's just, isn't it crazy that and everybody hears stories in the industry. Everybody hears about all these different stories. You've heard more about it than anybody else. It's crazy the success they've had amongst all the dysfunction.
I would agree with that. I mean, the whole story is messy and kind of shades of gray, right? Because Jeff Luhnow and the front office there, they did do smart things as far as constructing a baseball roster. there was so much other stuff that they didn't do well and didn't pay attention to, and it ends up coming back to bite them in really explosive ways. But that's, that's kind of another part I think that's uncomfortable, is like, they're not pure evil. They're not dumb. They did do some things that you could argue were dumb, but there was some success mixed in there too. And it's I'll go back to that word. It's hard to reconcile those things, right? And I think it just, people like clean, tidy narratives, stories, you good, you bad, and that's that. And that's very often not real life and not real business settings and not real sports settings.
When you think about delivering this message, getting the book out, it really is crazy where the media, especially newspapers, as newspapers, I hate to say it, in a lot of ways, are dying. We have less and less beat writers. We have less and less columnists. We have, the national baseball writer is practically gone in newspapers. Thank God for The Athletic. It's great journalism. Eno Saris joins us every single week here on the show. He's obviously here in the Bay Area, but I'm always pumping you guys. I think it's worth a subscription, whether you're football fan, basketball fan, soccer fan, whatever. You guys cover sports better than everybody else. How important is it that you had The Athletic, and this is a place you could truly help get your message out, that if you were working for a traditional paper, let's say the Houston Chronicle, knowing how much power the Astros have, could have been a different story?
Well, you know what? In the case of Houston, and this is something I only really realized more after the fact. I was still relatively young when I first got to Houston. Would have been, 2013, right? So I would have been, 26. I turned that year. If I can do math, and at this point of the day, I don't know that I can. Very early in my time
26
there,
is young. You're now in there with a bunch of multimillionaire players, a lot of pressure, and you're 26.
Right. And so, I'm young, and aggressive reporter, maybe a little naive. And, I very quickly realized that people are looking at this team like they're crazy. That there is there are questions about the culture. And I'm very proud of the story that I wrote back in 2014. It was actually a story that when the Astros win the World Series in 2017, Luno makes a reference to it at the White House. When teams go to the White House to celebrate, Luno says, they called it Radical Waves, but in the end we did it. Radical Waves is a reference to the headline of this story of mine that I did. But the next year in 2015, the Astros tried to get me removed from the beat. They tried to get me fired from at least covering them. Jim Crane, the owner, and spokesperson Gene Diaz met with two of the top editors at the Chronicle, and they stood by me. And it's only now, as I've gone to work at other places, gotten older, and realized, man, there are places where that would not have happened, where they would not have had that journalistic spine to do it. And so I have a lot of reverence and, really gratitude for the Chronicle for being true to, journalism there. But yeah, look, there are places that, and I certainly worked at one, but that doesn't have the backbone for that kind of stuff.
Well, I will say this, not only the book, but everything that you've done, it's career defining. You will never be forgotten. For all of us that work in baseball, and when we look back on this period of time, yeah, they can put the beard out there, which would be Dusty Baker, and now I think Dana Brown. They can put the beard out there, but we now know what's really going on the inside, and your reporting has been second to none. It's career defining. I hope you win awards. I hope you're super successful with this book. I can tell you this, we're going to promote the heck out of it. We will promote it. We're going to sell copies, I guarantee you, because you know how our fans feel about the Astros. They're going to love this read. So thank you so much for your time. I know you got a lot of people you're talking to. Appreciate it. We're going to sell this for you, and congratulations. Your work has been second to none.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. It's very kind of you.
You be well. Evan Drellich of The Athletic. Yeah, this is, wow.